Hey everybody, it's Taylor, and I want to talk today about the value of one rep maxes and really what that means. What benefit do they provide? Are they a good idea for you? Everything involved in one rep maxes. So, it's something that here at Elevate we're testing next week. We've been doing a cycle that is quote unquote a powerlifting cycle. We're doing the main lifts, bench, squat, deadlift, and we're also doing strict press. So we've been building up on that for 8 weeks. We switch up our programming all year long, so you're having different focuses throughout the year. Some of it's absolute strength, some of it's working on imbalances. Just gonna take a sip of my coffee. We are testing that as a way to end cap our cycle. Now, the cycle itself is comprised of a lot of sub-maximal work. We're not testing one rep maxes every week, certainly not every 4 weeks. It's something that we only do really a couple times a year here at Elevate. And the reason we do that is because a one rep max is really just an expression of the training that you've done up to that point. It is not the thing that makes you stronger. And I'll speak to that in a minute, but it's really all that sub-maximal work that you've done over and over and over. Now, sub-maximal just means it's not your max weight. It's not 100%. So we may be doing higher volume between 70 and 80%. We may be doing moderate volume between 80 and 90%. We might even venture up to 95%, stuff like that. But there's a time and a place to do that. And really, like the point I want to get across is that the way that you get strength over time is to work these sub-maximal reps. And you should be challenging yourself, and you should be testing every once in a while so that you set a new marker for yourself. But for example, the program that we were using, we based it off the 5-3-1, from Jim Wendler. And it's a great program because it does have you do that sub-maximal work all the time. And even in this program, you're basing your quote unquote max on really only 90% of your best. So you're working even more under that 100%. So even when we go to 95% in our sets, you're not actually doing a true 95%, it's actually less. So when we're talking about kind of building up that volume, it's something that I use with our weightlifters, it's something that I use in our group program. We are constantly working between that like 70 and 85%. That's really where we spend a lot of our time, because not only does it give you enough repetition to get better at the movements and more efficient at them, but we can build up some volume, which means we can increase muscle size and strength, and we can do that without overtaxing your nervous system and your body, because those heavier weights, when we're talking about like over 90%, if you're doing that all the time, you're gonna have a lot of wear and tear on your joints, and you can only do so many reps and so much volume over that like 90% threshold. So there is a time and a place to do that, and I think part of just general periodization and progressive overload is we're working towards those heavier weights, and we're pushing our boundaries a little bit, and then we're backing off again. So if your program consists of one rep maxes all the time, then I would be very wary of that program. Or if you're wondering why you're so broken down, maybe that's the reason. So, the sub-maximal effort is just super, super important. And that's why we program here at Elevate, like on an annual basis, we do all kinds of different programs and focuses. And there's times of the year where just doing a lot of unilateral work, a lot of single leg, single arm, tempo work where we're going slower and pay attention to what we're doing. That's good for ironing out imbalances and finding weak spots. Then we have kind of higher rep range periods where we're doing 10s, 15s on any given exercise to build up the size of those muscles before we, try to exert maximal force. So there's a lot to be said for variety over time, and I'll kind of give you an example personally, because I like to use myself as a testing ground for anything that I do and anything that I have my clients do. So for me, I focus mainly on Olympic weightlifting. So I am focusing on snatch and clean and jerk, and doing the things that help me get better at those. But as I get older, I'm 32 now, I'm heading towards that master's class, like it is more and more important to me that I maintain enough muscle mass on my body to be more durable, and that I do work unilateral exercises so that I'm not just constantly doing 2 feet and 2 arms at the same time, because I'm only going to exacerbate the imbalances that I already have. So on top of mobility work and all that stuff, just speaking to strength work, so for me, like I haven't done a conventional deadlift in, I don't know, a couple of years. Everything I do is either snatch deadlifts or clean style deadlifts, and the weights are pretty submaximal. So like up until now, like my max was 405 in pounds on conventional deadlifts, and that was 2.5 years ago. And at that time I trained it kind of here and there and just wanted to test it. But all along, so let's say 405 is my max. All along I've been doing snatch deadlifts and clean deadlifts at no more than 315, 320, stuff like that, maybe 330. But I've been doing rep after rep after rep and doing this week after week for a long time. So I'd kind of build up for a while, back off, build up for a while. I do usually three weeks building up, 1 week backing off. And the other day I wanted to test my deadlift max because I hadn't done it in a while, and I was kind of curious as to what I was capable of pulling off the ground. And for me, it's something I want to work on right now. It's just kind of a focus I want to have for the next 6 months, let's say. And without training the conventional deadlift at all, I pulled 418 for a 13-pound PR. And for me, at this point in my training career, like PRs are kind of hard to come by. So while I wasn't shocked by it, I was a little surprised that I could pull that much without training it. And my point is that I've spent lots of time doing reps and reps and reps of sub-maximal loads and really never touching that 400-pound mark again in 2 years. But I was still able to make progress. So there's something to be said for doing a variety of exercises to get you stronger in multiple ways, and doing that at loads that don't crush you, that don't hurt you and beat you down, and from time to time pushing that envelope to where you find out what you're capable of, and then you kind of back off from there. So I guess my big point is 1 rep maxes, as fun as they are, and they can be very useful to test, they are not the way to get strong. They're just an expression of the work that you've done. Now on a separate note, I think 1 rep maxes are definitely a kind of a skill set on their own. Knowing how to approach it both mentally and physically when you are going towards maximal lifts. And really the main thing to me is having the discipline to apply all that technique and form and consistency that you've done on those 70, 80% reps, maintaining that on that 100% or that 101%. Because if you approach that heavy weight and all of your training goes out the window as far as your technique is concerned, then you're not really expressing what you're capable of. And that's why I'm kind of so hesitant to have any of our clients and members ever go towards a max when they are not super confident and comfortable with what they're doing and how they're doing it. Because to me, if your 1 rep max doesn't at least look a lot like your 80%, then there's a big problem there. And that's kind of where the skill of that 1 rep max comes in, or it tells me that you haven't had enough consistency in your training up to that point to be able to apply that usefully to a 1 rep max. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, it was ugly, but I got it. And certainly that happens from time to time. But if you're technically consistent and you've done enough reps to where you are very aware of your positions in lifts and your bracing and how you breathe and your speed and all that kind of stuff, then your 1 rep max shouldn't really look all that different. People should go, hey, that looked easy. And then you're thinking like, holy shit, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. But you make it look like it's easy. And I think that's that to me is the most impressive thing, is if you can pull that off, without pulling the it was ugly but I got it card. So anyways, hopefully that helps anybody out there who is kind of wondering about maxes. I get a lot of questions about that, and what the progress should be, how much should my max increase, and like when should I test it. Strength takes time, guys, so let it sink in. If you're constantly testing maxes, at some point that's going to be a big step back for you. In your first year or two of any kind of lifting, you're going to hit PRs all the time, but make sure you're focusing on the consistency behind it and not just focusing on the number. Numbers feed the ego, but the consistency is what's key for long-term results. So that's all I got. Hopefully that helps on that topic. Thanks, guys.